The hike in spiking. Is it safe to drink in public? Well, welcome to Mark and Pete, two blokes with half an opinion. Now, here's a thought.
Demon in the drink. An alcoholic drink is socially liked, with friends that bear no malice, unless your drink is cruelly spiked and it becomes a poison chalice. Well, the government has decided that more action needs to be taken on spiking drinks, whether it be in the home, whether it be in public or anywhere else. In fact, it goes on to say that spiking is an insidious and violating crime, catching its victims off guard and often leaving them with little recall of what happened, beyond the fact that they have been a victim of crime and, in some cases, and in many worst incidences, horrendous secondary offences, many of which are either sexual or that they are there to basically fleece the victims from money and many other things. But when we look at the overall situation here, how do we actually solve this problem? How do you track the culprit? Well, Mr. Pete, I ask you, if there is a way of being able to find those individuals who are guilty of such crime, what should be the punishment?
Well, Mr. Mark, here's the thing. This sort of activity, spiking drinks and the like, it's been around since people started drinking, I guess. And it was made illegal in the UK, 1861 Harm Against the Persons Act, specifically targets this sort of behaviour. There is in it a prohibition of administering anything that's going to prevent you from being able to make decisions, and there's a prohibition against administering a poison. And it's the act in the act. It's seen as a very serious crime. In fact, it's up to life imprisonment. So that's the same as that would be the same as murder in the UK. So as we don't have the death penalty, so it's already seen very seriously. So if these things can be detected, it's already on the books as a crime. So these things can be dealt with. The question is whether there is the political will. In political here, I'm including the courts. The political will to punish people who behave in this way, as it's becoming a bit of an epidemic in the UK over the past few years, isn't it? It's really
indeed
spiked, if you'll forgive me.
Sadly, it has. And what's noted is that many will actually recognise that they are those individuals who are the culprits are guilty of what's known as date rape drugs. So these drugs are GHB, retinol, and ketamine typically. Now, they've been historically associated with spiking incidents. What's interesting is that as we sort of look at statistics across the years, the actual number of victims has increased quite dramatically. Now, here's the point. We can look at the statistics, but what I really want to sort of get to is, why is this occurring and why is this actually on the increase? Is it something that people basically see that it's an opportunity because they can commit a crime, whether it's a date rape crime or other, and the fact that they can get away with it? So if you look at some of the statistics, so for example, if I look at statistics that have been recorded, not the ones that are basically actually happening, but in July to September of 2021, there were recorded of 918. But if I move forward to the last records that the government publishes, April to June 2023, it's 1,746. Now, of course, the point to note there is that those are the ones that were recorded. And surely, almost certainly, that the number of incidents beyond that were considerably higher. So what we're seeing is this hiking in the spiking. And why is it actually occurring? Is it simply that it's an easy way to basically target a victim? And my question really then should be, is what do establishments need to do to be able to stop this happening? Now, the government has highlighted here that training needs to be put in place, better training, for staff. So, for example, bar staff. But there is another worrying trend, because ironically, some bar staff have actually been found guilty of actually committing this crime. So this isn't just necessarily those who have purchased their drinks at the bar. It's the spiking has actually occurred at the bar. So is it really safe to go out? And what from a public's perspective, what do they need to do? Is it that you have to always be with somebody? Is there a way in which they can protect themselves better? I mean, surely for those who are coming through the door, people should be searched, shouldn't they? I mean, is that one way of being able to
Yeah,
check? Is that an
that is
effective way, or is there something else that can be done?
that is one way. I can see of doing it. I mean, people do talk about things like having a guard. In fact, I believe you can purchase such a thing, a special guard for your drink, a little lid, effectively, that you put on it,
Yes.
keeping it away. I mean, I remember in my misspent youth when being amongst if I were with a lot of people, I would keep my hand over my drink. But that was because there was a trend. I'm talking about the 1980s of tipping Pernod into your beer,
Ah, yes.
which that's not a date rape drug, but it does ruin the taste of the beer. Not quite as serious, but but
Yes.
the same way of protecting you can put into place. But as soon as you start putting things like base, like people being searched, etc., it changes the whole feel of going out, doesn't it?
Yes.
Now, and I think it is part of I think we can see various culture things at play here. One is online culture sort of flipping into real life, in that if you use this drug on someone, it's almost like they're not real, right? And you're making them into a plaything, like something in a computer game. Maybe that's playing into it. There hasn't been, I don't think, any real analysis, scientific research on this. But the other thing I would say plays into it, just from looking at how culture has shifted. If you go back to the 1990s and the rave culture, then now taking drugs had already taken hold in Western culture, but taking drugs just to enhance your dancing was popular at that time, with drugs like ecstasy, which is also used as a day rate drug, but not as popular as the other ones you mentioned. So that's become part of the culture. Popping pills or little bits of drug has become part of the culture. There's this idea of treating people in a different way, informed by how you treat people online. You're not going to harm them if they're not real, or if they're online. It's just an online game. But in real life, you do harm them. And I think that's played into it. And not that
Yes.
people aren't aware that it's wrong, but in the moment, the magnitude of what they're doing is taken away because of these cultural elements of the use of drugs being common, and it being a bit, when you're playing with people, it can be a bit like treating them online, as if they're an online avatar or something. Maybe
Yes.
I'm wrong, but it does seem to be that is part of what the shift has been. That, along with a real feeling of the lack of ability. This has been documented. The lack of ability of people to connect, and there's been recent statistics which show that millennials and the generation after that are having less sex than we obviously were during our adolescence, or at least, or everyone else was, and we weren't.
Indeed.
As fellow nerds, but the that sort of shift, also that alienation, difficulty in forming relationships, has been shown to be more prevalent. And so here's a way of having some sort of sexual encounter without it. And finally, my final point in my analysis of this is it's a way of making money swiftly. And with the breakdown in society caused with different cultures rubbing up against each other, you find that people are willing to use anyway, even something that is really against human rights, to take people's money and property. Because it's not just, of course, as you pointed out, a way of having your sexual way with someone. It's a way of making away with their property.
Well, here's the thing. Let's come from the victim's perspective. Um, it's not just always about women, because men are also victims of this. But it
Yeah,
seems as though the vast majority are women, and it's men that are the culprits. Now, a
right.
lot of people will say that when they go to a public venue, CCTV is certainly one opportunity to capture somebody spiking the victim's drink. But unfortunately, CCTV doesn't cover everything. Now, the other side to it is, of course, having friends with you, meaning that you have a credible eyewitness if a suspect is spiking a victim. The challenge with that is that unless the police are called to the venue at the time of the incident, it's hard to identify eyewitnesses.
Yeah,
And the other side of it is, of course, that the venue owner, albeit that they are responsible for the safety of their customers, may not be on hand to be able to also be there to either witness the incident, etc. So here's the other thing: is that evidence also needs to be, and this is the other part of it, which is more medical, which is a positive toxicology report that can be
yes,
used. But what it does mean is that the victim needs to be able to act quickly in a time when they can't act quickly. Now, here's the thing: is it coming back to, is it safe to drink in public anymore? Well, it's not just ironically in public, because these incidents also can take place with individuals who have perhaps invited somebody back to their own home. So it may not necessarily be in a public venue. But here's the thing: I do agree that I think that the basically the dispensing of the drink is key, because let's take the assumption that the drink handed over at a bar is something that is safe. Normally, where the incident occurs is when the drink is left unattended. And that's where I think that, to your point, whether it's a cap on the drink or whether it's that you take your drink with you, there needs to be some way of protecting the drink. Because that's ultimately where the actual incident typically starts. Now, there is
yes,
something else that has been highlighted, which is that the vast majority of victims who have been aware of this, and even under studies, carefully controlled studies, have recognized that the drink tastes different. Meaning
ah,
that if
yes,
you actually suspect that the drink is not what you expect, so most drinkers who go to a pub or a club will probably be very familiar with the beverage of choice. If
yes,
there is some deviation to that, the guidance quite simply is do not drink it.
yeah,
And even though that you might be with your friends, family, and colleagues or anything like that, it's basically don't take the risk. But it does raise a bigger question, which is surely you're there to enjoy yourself. You're not there to, you know, um, if you're
oh,
constantly on guard, it sort of spoils the evening. And I do wonder that there is a worrying social trend. You mentioned it before, but that's the thing that concerns me, that there is an element of trust that seems to have been lost. And that's the
well,
thing that I think is
that's,
sad that we've got to this point.
and as this is here, there is no simple answer to it. Once that sort of trust, there's been a breakdown in society, and it's happened.
Yes.
We'll no doubt be coming back to this in various different episodes of Mark and Pete. This breakdown in the trust in the society, what's sometimes called the social compact, certain ways that you will behave. I mean, you could theoretically, I know that you would do this anyway, Mark, as you're walking down the street, just thump everyone you see. Um,
Quite.
but you don't do that. There's a social compact. You normally just walk some past someone, you don't flinch, you just, you're happy they're not going to do it. In the same way, you assume they're not going to spike your drink. And when that's taken away, well, there isn't an easy way to restore that level of trust. I just wonder, just on a practical level, whether this will mean a spike, again, forgive the pun, in buying bottled drinks, because they're sealed. And I know the manufacturer could theoretically spike them. They do, they put alcohol in them. But, that's what you're buying. So, bottled beer, bottled flavored drinks. Personally, see, if I go to the pub, I quite often buy the bottle of wine and then share it with someone. So, although you could theoretically spike the glasses, yeah, it's unlikely, isn't it? So, these different behaviour, different ways of purchasing things may happen. You don't have open glasses. You buy a bottle that's
Yeah.
sealed, maybe that's a way forward. It's a shame because, of course, beers that are on tap are often the best beers. So it's a shame, but I could see that pattern of behaviour if this continues developing, and manufacturers will respond, I suppose.
Yes, and
Yep.
the government has mentioned, as you said, it's not always about sexual offences. Sometimes it is about theft, and it's about fraud as
Yes.
well, because people will steal cards, and there's also violence involved as well. It renders somebody defenceless. But here's the thing. I think it's really key to understand what the public think here. Should the responsibility and the onus be on the owner of the venue, or should it be we as the public be much more vigilant and more demanding of things like protective bottles or glasses and things like that to ensure that you are in a safer position? Because I'm sure that there will be a cost and there'll be an impact to the service and the products that you buy, but for those who have been victims, surely it's a price worth paying, because it's debilitating, it's humiliating, and it can be life-changing. So I'd be keen to understand, for anyone who has been a victim, to hear what they think and get their viewpoint.
Yes, listeners, as regular listeners will know, we do like you to get in touch with the show, and your comments are featured in later episodes. So please do let us know. Have you been a victim of having your drink spiked? And if so, were you aware of who did it? And do you think that the venue should be more responsible? A balance of responsibility is possible. It's, with selling illegal drugs, for example, the venue can be held responsible as well as the people selling. So something is possible to be worked out in law and in the courts with various if cases abroad. So, but we'd like to hear, what do you think? And let us know. Get in touch with us. You can make sure you subscribed at markandpete.com and just leave a comment on this and, in fact, any episode. But from Mark and Pete, it's goodbye for this week, and catch you next time.